Good evening, TheoTrade. This is Corey Rosenblumen. You're watching the Theo Nightly video for May the 4th in 2021. And we had a pullback. We had a sell swing, but the sell swing was mostly concentrated in the technology sector. That was the case yesterday with the leading tech stocks. We'll see some of these in a moment, but that includes Apple and Amazon, Tesla, Qualcomm, and a few others that will show momentarily. But just getting us on the same page, the S&P pulled back, retraced, snapped back like a rubber band from 4,200 down to the 20-day moving average. That's kind of the concept, that even though we're seeing uptrending prices, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, all the way up, this was just an insane, overvalued, stronger than normal type of bull rally. But now we're getting a pullback or a retracement, just like any of these prior events. Stock prices do not go straight up. They wiggle, swiggle, or we might say swing. And we are due, were due, and ultimately have been due for a pullback. And that's away from 4,200 to prior support levels. Let's start with the stronger markets, which includes the Dow Mini Futures that came down from 34,000 down to its 20-day moving average. And again, similar logic on pullbacks. That worked a little bit better, I think, than the S&P. Now, the Russell has its own overhead resistance into 2,300. And again, we're seeing the hourly chart on the right and the daily chart on the left. And we're seeing a flattening or a sideways chop consolidation, or as we like to say at TheoTrade, range contraction, which is kind of a box or sideways price movement, tends to follow or come after range expansion. So range contraction follows range expansion. And that just gives a broader framework for how we place trades or sell premium or purchase premium or play short-term strategies. I left the Nasdaq for last because it had a deeper pullback. And again, the selling pressure is focused in the Nasdaq, which is our tech-heavy index. That fell from 14,000 and is now underneath. We had downside targets really here. And see that today's session exceeded these downside targets we had planned for. So we're seeing a sharper sell swing that has taken the Nasdaq lower. Now, if you're trading Qs, trading the triple Qs, that's going to be a similar ETF or similar type of strategy. And we're talking about in the past here, we're talking about prior setups or prior examples where the market was overbought, overextended, and then pulled back like a rubber band, snaps back. So that's complete, that's playing out. It's also happening in the technology sector, which is tradable using the product XLK. So that's where the big picture is. But notice a couple of things about today's session. Despite the Nasdaq being off about 2.5% and the Russell being off 1.5%, the Dow Mini Futures basically unchanged, and the S&P is skirting the middle, which is being down 1%. That is in part because financials, or stocks in the XLF, we may see some of those in a moment, are strong. And believe it or not, that actually is a new all-time high that just printed at the start of the video. So the financial sector, XLF, just printed a new, I don't think it's that impressive, but still, it is numbers, numerically, a new all-time high. So we can jump back and see that that played into a strong rally. Again, financial stocks have been in focus. This is a weekly chart here. We could even pull back to a monthly chart to see that that strong rally has built strength in some of the leading financial stocks. And that's something to keep an eye on. But industrials are positive on today's session. Again, if you look at the Nasdaq, and believe me, I'm a trader like everybody else, looking at this, seeing the market down today this much, you might miss, and that's why I'm doing the video on this topic, might miss the fact that the industrials, XLI, joined the financials at a new, double check that, new all-time high. We'll do it again with the materials. Materials joined up with a new all-time high. Again, that's the monthly chart. See the daily chart? That is a new all-time high. XLB is the material sector. Now, energy is bullish or positive today, but it is not at the all-time high. Crude oil continues to trade higher because, in part, some of the focus of the most recent commentary or news events from the Fed has been on inflation. They say inflation's running a little bit higher than expected. We can see that. We can understand that. Stock price is all-time high. But crude, that will not be a new all-time high. But it would be if we continue pushing into 66 or 67 per barrel, a 2021 high. And again, pulling back on that perspective, crude is well down. We're trading much lower than where it used to trade earlier, strangely to say this, but earlier in the decade. And that was really into 110 or 100 per barrel. And that stayed that way from about 2011 to 2014, and the market has been lower ever since. Now, gold has done some interesting things, and that is in focus for today's market. Now, there were news comments about rising or raising interest rates potentially, and that was a bearish headline for gold. More on that in future days. But let's keep that focus in mind. As bearish as this is, and it is bearish, we'll jump to the Nasdaq chart, look at some of the broader pictures. The Nasdaq still uptrending, still way overextended, still far, far, far above these daily and weekly, and in this case, monthly moving averages. Plenty of room to fall if the market ever does start to play to the downside. Again, the weirdest thing that I can think about is that there are sectors, and within the sectors, 83 or 93, that changed a few moments ago, 93 stocks in the S&P 500 are making new 52-week highs. So that is just one of those things to scratch our heads on and position and use them for strong stocks getting stronger. So now let's look at a comparison of a weekly and daily chart. What I'm going to do is show some of those scans, and all this is our typical new 52-week high scan. And the way that it's set up, it's 252 days, so that's essentially a trading year. So which stocks in the S&P 500 are making new 52-week highs? And I'll show the code for that. If you're curious and want to program the data or program a scan into your own thinkorswim platform, it's essentially the highest high, right? Just the data here, and how to set the scan up. You can always email us at support@theotrade.com. We'll be happy to get that to you if it is not already part of your scan queries. So mine is actually part of the public scans, new yearly highs, new yearly lows. So if you are curious, that's how to get that scan. Load scan query, public, new yearly highs, or if you want to play to the downside, new yearly lows, that will be in the S&P 500. These are some of the candidates, and I will list them by market cap, meaning UNH, Home Depot, some of the ones that are most familiar or tradable or easier with better liquidity and better volume. Then some of the ones at the bottom of the list, which is again sorted by market cap, would include these names that we may not have heard about. But we certainly have, most likely, have heard of United Healthcare, Home Depot, AbbVie Labs, UPS, Raytheon, CVS, and the list goes on. So what we'll do at this point for the video is just take a look at some of them and note how these ETFs are being pulled to new all-time highs. UNH is one of the candidates, or it's the largest market cap at this moment, that is making a new 52-week high. And then Home Depot is right beneath that with a large market cap making new 52-week highs. We can see this again, just for comparison's sake, on the weekly chart on the right and the daily chart on the left. And the best strategies in strong stocks is to expect them to get stronger and then trade pullbacks or flags or calls into rising stocks. Not at all-time highs, but on pullbacks or retracements, or we call them flags. So we do that to manage risk and opportunity. We don't just get long at the highs. We wait for pullbacks to do so. AbbVie Labs, not an all-time high, but it just crept its way, and that's what some of the other sectors are doing too. Snuck its way to a 52-week high. Now UPS, again, we talked about the TheoTrade mantra, one of them at least, which is range contraction leads to range expansion, or a trending environment with higher highs and higher lows tends to give way to chop or consolidation or a range. And UPS did just that. and has broken quite powerfully to the upside. That is UPS. And then we have Raytheon, not an all-time high. CVS Corporation, not a new all-time high. And other stocks in the market cap list. So just a few of them include US Bancorp. And I want to focus on some of the financials. Capital One Financial is part of the sector that's strong. And again, plenty of other candidates to take a look at in this market. Yes, it's a bearish session. It is. But there's a lot of other things happening behind the market. A lot of news, a lot of risk, a lot of volatility. But of course, all of that brings us to opportunity for our positions, for our spreads, for any type of sold premium or strategies we might be doing. As always, be careful and safe in this market. This is Corey Rosenblum with tonight's Theo video update for May the 4th, 2021.